The challenge 10 is consisted by a balance application. This application allows you to enter any balance and also put the budget and the expense. This application have used the element of tiny database. This element is allows you to save any item that you want, any data. The screen one is the cover. So this cover have an image, a label, and a clock. This clock, when the time enable is going to be true, is going to open the screen two. The screen two also is a menu that is one of my innovations with four buttons and labels. The button one is going to send you to the screen 4.1. The button number two is going to open the screen point one, and the button three is going to appear a text. And when the time of the clock is ended, it's going to make it to false. The button 4 is going to also send other message, and when the clock 1 make it false, it's going to disappear all this message. The screen number 3 is the expense menu, the menu of the main screen of characteristic of this application. We have four buttons, one for add a new expense, one for show you your expense, one to delete that expense, and exit for the application. The one is going to open the screen 4 where you can put your expense. The number 2 is going to open the screen 5 where you can see all your expense. The number 3 is going to call the tiny DB1 and it's going to clear all, delete it. And also is going to the notify one is going to send notify you that they are delayed the expense. Right. And the button 4 is going to close application. Here we are in the main screen of the application. We have the expense, one to ingress the budget and the other one to the expense. The budget is like, for example, if you want to build a room, you have a budget of $15,000. So that are your budget, and you finish that room, and your expense are for $10,000. So that is expense. The the functioning. The bottom one is going to open the screen 3 that is a menu. We have a variable, the total expenses, with a value of 0, and when the screen 4 initially set, it's going to set the global total expense variable to call the tiny db1. This tiny db1 is going to tag the total expense, that is the variable, and is going to have a value of 0. So when you click the number 2, if you didn't put any text in the text box 1 and text box 2, or the text box 2 is going to call the notifier and is going to show you, please introduce your expense. Also, if the text 1 and the text 2 have text, is going to make that the set total expense to add 1 for that variable. Then it's going to call the tinydb to tag the total expense, and also is going to, now the value that starts in 0 is going to be now the global expense, and that global expense is going to be the text of the text box 1 and the text box 2. When you click also, it's going to save it, so the notifier 1 is going to notice you the expense, save it, and it's going to clean the text box 1 and text box 2. This screen is going to show you all your expense data that you save in the last screen. We have the same variable because if they don't be the same variable, it's not going to do nothing. So when the screen 5 initializate, is going to make that the total expense variable is going to call the tiny db1 with a value of 0 with the name of total expense, the number of the variable. If the total expense variable is equal to 0, then it's going to show that the label text is going to no expense to show. Also, if the total expense is increasing by one, so it's going to do that the label 1, the text is going to appear in the label 1 with a space and the data of the tiny db1, and also a space to divide all your expenses. These one are the example of canvas the notes. So we have the text box one, and is the same function of the screen 4. We have the tinydb with a variable of total notes, and the screen is going to initialize with a tinydb value of 0. When you push the button back, it's going to close the screen, and when you click the save button, that is the one to save the note, if the text box one is empty, it's going to call the notifier with please introduce a note. Also, if the text ones one have text, it's going to make that the total notes is going to be adding one by one. And call is going to call the tinydb1 with a value of the get total, and that get total, the total note, sorry, it's going to have the value of the text box one text. And also it's going to show you your note is already saved, and it's going to make that the text box one is going to be empty. This screen is the menu of the screen 6, the last screen I showed you. This is the menu, the new notes, view notes, delete all the notes, and exit for the application. The bottom one is to save notes. The button 2 is going to show you that note. The button 3 is going to sorry, is going to delete all the data that you save in the tinydb1, and the button 3 is going to close the application. The screen 7 is going to show you your note with the same variable total notes with a value of 0. The bottom one is going to close the screen, and it's going to send you again to the screen 6.1, and the total notes is going to call the tinydb1 to have a value of 0 with the name of total notes. If the total notes is equal to 0, it's going to appear in the text of the level 2 new notes to show. Then if there is a data, is going to advance by one, and the global note is going to appear in the text the level 2. It's going to call the number of the global total notes in the tinydb1. This screen is for the expense screens, but I aggregated in the end, so I'm going to explain you faster. The balance is for all the money that you have. In this screen you upload all that money, and with that money you get a reference of the expense of the budgets that you make. So when the button 3 is clicked, it's going to open the screen 3. When the button 2 is clicked, it's going to close the screen with a variable of total expense. And when you click the button 1, it's going to be empty the text box 1, call the notify 1, please introduce the balance. It's the same of the other, like a screen 4 and the screen 7.